Welcome back to the Voices of Change, y'all. We are back with another episode in our historical figure series. Today, we're digging into the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not just as the man behind a I Have a Dream speech, but as a global voice for justice, someone who connected the Black struggle in the U.S. with movements across the world. He was a voice of change.
Come on now, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. coming to you live and direct. And that's absolutely right, Tex. MLK's name, it rung throughout classrooms, throughout history books, but also we asked the question, how was he often portrayed? It's surface level. Peaceful marches, the dream speech, the Nobel Prize. But there's way more to the story. He was young, he was brilliant, radical in many ways. And his evolution tells us a lot about the world we live in now.
So, today, we're going to chop it up about some of these lesser-known truths, his roots, the global connections he made, the times he took heat for being too bold, and the stuff about him that history books skip over, but if you know about him, it's fine. That's the point of why we're talking about this, because he was a voice of change. Casual convo, but fact-checked, as we would like to say what we're about to say in this episode. So let's get into it, Gabe. Let's get into it, man.
All right, right on. So like we said, we're going beyond the surface. This is a pro-Black, pan-African lens, and we'll explore his roots, his struggles, and his bold moves and global ties. All right, and without further ado, we're going to start at the beginning. And with the beginning is always starting with the early life. Martin Luther King, he was born January 15th in 1929, Atlanta, Georgia. What they say, they call it Peach City down there? What they call Atlanta?
Peach Street. They got Peach Street. It's in the Peach State.
Peach State, Peach Street, Peach City. Holla if you hear me. Yeah. And so in Atlanta, Georgia, there's a little bit of a twist, though. His birth name was actually Michael King Jr. Fact checked.
Right. And his dad, Michael King Sr., took a trip to Germany in the 30s and was inspired by Martin Luther, actually, who was the Protestant reformer, for those people who are into the theologies of the world. His dad came back and changed both their names to Martin Luther King, and little Martin was around 5 when that happened.
And interesting to see, interesting to hear. One thing about Mr. MLK, first known as Michael King, turning into Martin Luther King, is that his family was very tight-knit and rooted in faith. In fact, his father was also a pastor. His mom was a school teacher, and education and activism ran deep within their bloodline.
Another thing is that he also skipped grades, right? Meaning that if you're skipping grades, I'm right up here. He started college at 15 and graduated from Morehouse at 19 with a degree in sociology. And shout out to Morehouse, because I am an alumni of Clark Atlanta University, and clearly Morehouse is doing this thing. And just thinking about the fact that he actually graduated at 19 with a degree in sociology, that's just wild to think about, because we have a fellow man here who is also a graduate of sociology. But he graduated at 19, though? Tell us.
Definitely not. No, that definitely did not at all. Actually graduated college at 25, I believe. Little short story. I went to college 2015 through 2019, dropped out for a year and a half, then finished in 2021. 2021, walked in 2022. This is a short little story for you guys, but I digress. Another fellow, degree holder of sociology, I definitely align a lot with the methodology, the approach, and the significance of Dr. pro-Pan-African, Black vibes, and, about his roots, his struggles, and all the different movements that he has made. But back to the story. So, it is wild that he did get a degree at 19, which is actually kind of crazy, in sociology. It was then seminary in Pennsylvania and a PhD in theology from Boston University. And when you think about it, Dr. King, he didn't stop. He kept going all the way up till he got his doctorate. And when he was over at Boston University, fun fact, that is where he found and met his then wife, later to be wife, Miss Greta Scott, a then activist, artist, and his lifelong partner in the movement.
And then by 26, he was a pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. That role set the stage for what came next in his path of being a voice of change.
And so this set the precedent for this next step. One that we will touch base on is the Montgomery bus boycott. And a little fun fact about the Montgomery bus boycott is that in December of 1955, Rosa Parks said, no, not doing it, not having it, to giving up her seat. And King gets tapped to lead the Montgomery bus boycott. He was new in town, only 26, but already making a noise. This boycott was led by MLK. He was chosen to lead, and it lasted for 381 days of a boycott. Not only did the community come together, they carpooled together, they walked together, but we also stood some types of resilience and resistance towards this bus boycott.
And that boycott went on for 381 days. That is more than 1 year and some days. Folks walked, shared rides, stayed off buses in protests of segregation. His house got bombed. He got arrested, but he stayed committed to being a voice of change.
And eventually the Supreme Court ruled that the bus segregation was unconstitutional. A huge win for pro-Black and Pan-African associates, and it put MLK on the national stage.
And then from there, he founded, or co-founded, I would rather say, the SCLC. I've actually walked by their office where they were originally founded, which is the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and became its first president.
The more you know. And this is where we take our next step to where the story actually expands. And so we think about, what MLK stands for. It's pro-Black, Pan-African lens, right? Well, something that also combines and goes with this is global solidarity. MLK was the mascot for global solidarity. In 1957, he actually traveled to Ghana for its independence celebration. And that trip then opened his eyes to another lens that was even more linked between Black liberation in the U.S. and the decolonization movements across Africa.
He also met Kwame Nkrumah, somebody whose name we've mentioned in our previous historical figures series, and he saw the ripple effect of freedom movements. He also condemned apartheid in South Africa and supported anti-colonial efforts globally. And now, just to add on to that, is that he was a voice of change during his generation, and as you can see, we're talking about him because his voice still lives on nowadays. And some of the things that he did, I personally would say I completely support them and I fully agree with them to a certain extent. Therefore, him being a voice of change was not just for himself in that generation. It had an everlasting, forever impact to where we will always talk about it for generations.
Like it takes. Right on. And so, moving on to our next one. This is where Pan-African thread comes in, right? And Pan-African, bringing everybody together. King didn't just see himself as a Southern preacher fighting the Jim Crow, segregation laws that they had instilled and inputted into the American society. He understood the global nature of Black oppression and Black resistance.
And then with this, the marches, the speeches, the hard truths, these things started becoming a point of climax. In 1963 was a turning point. After being jailed in Birmingham, he wrote the famous letter, the letter from Birmingham jail, where he called out white moderates and emphasized that justice too long delayed is justice denied. And for those people hearing this, us talking about this now, think about what's currently going on in our current society still. Was he a foreteller? Or is he somebody who was living in his presence at that time, but also stating that this is something that we want to continue for generations to come on? If you actually go check out some of like Dave Chappelle's comedy skits and stuff, which are extremely funny. Even Key and Peele, they have extremely funny skits, but their skits, they're probably a living legacy from some of the things that Martin Luther King had called out during his time.
I never thought about that text, but thank you for bringing that into my peripheral so I can go do a little bit more of in-depth research myself. Shout out Key and Peele and Dave Chappelle. But to piggyback off of the letter of Birmingham jail, these were speeches, these were hard truths, these were key movements that were being had in the 60s. And one thing that did follow this 1963 turning point letter from Birmingham jail was the March on Washington, where over 250,000 people gathered Mahalia Jackson, standing behind him, whispered, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." And he went off script. That iconic "I have a dream" moment was born right there.
Dream! I can't say it like him, but the result of that speech was technically, as people would say, and maybe we can actually factually say this, is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Yes, people have their differing opinions and differing perspectives on this, but he was a voice of change during his time because it created a consequence or a result that we are actually all still living from. And in the middle of it all, he wins the Nobel Peace Prize at just 35 years old. Like, damn, I wish we can win the Nobel Peace Prize one day for the voices of change. But yeah, but he won it at 35 years old, man. And that was a monumental thing for him and for the community that he represented as well.
Come on now. And that was the shift. That was the moment that, that he was that voice of change, and it touched not only his community, but millions and billions and trillions of others.
And a million!
And millions and millions. And after that, there was a shift. We call this the economic justice and criticism. And King, he did not stop simply at the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Yay. Nay, he started talking economic justice, fair wages, decent housing, union rights. And when he opposed the Vietnam War in 1967 during his Riverside Church speech, people turned on him.
And he said the U.S. was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. Even some of his allies backed away after that. But Dr. King didn't soften his stance.
In fact, instead of softening his stance, he actually stood 10 toes down. In that same year, he launched the Poor People's Campaign, calling for economic rights for poor Black and white folks alike. He knew racism and poverty were connected, which a lot of the times media likes to portray that racism and poverty are not. But in fact, they were and still are.
And then by April 1968, he was in Memphis supporting striking sanitation workers. The night before his death, he gave that chilling, "I've been to the mountaintop" speech.
And the next day, April 4th, 1968, he was shot on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel barn at 39. Too soon. Far too soon.
And Coretta Scott King, his partner, his wife, kept the movement alive, led marches, preserved his legacy. Over 100,000 people showed up to honor him, and we are still honoring him to this day because, as we have stated, he is a living, dead, still voice of change.
I think the best way to categorize MLK and what he does is that he was an icon, and he was a vigil for those without a voice, and he did become that voice of change, especially during the tumultuous times of the Jim Crow laws, segregation, and the the socioeconomic vices that they had around the Black community, tying poverty to the socioeconomic status and race. And so when you think about Martin Luther King, right, and what he did, who did he impact? His impact was massive. It didn't just impact his immediate community there in Atlanta, Georgia. No, it swerved and went and transferred all across the entire world. His "I Have a Dream" speech, his "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech, all these were the steps that, helped him to be that icon, that visual of those, to look forward, to be that peace in the world. And, what do we see now in his stead? We have MLK Day, a national holiday. Streets in every city are named after him. We have statues. But beyond that, we see that his ideas are constantly moving and keeping people moving. Nonviolence, radical love, and global unity. So thank you, MLK, for your voice of change. You are never to be forgotten, and your words still live on to this day.
And let's also sprinkle in some quick facts before we wrap this up. MLK was almost assassinated twice, actually, before 1968. In 1958, a woman stabbed him in Harlem. Doctors said if he had sneezed, he'd have been dead, or he'd have been died. Correct my English there.
Hey, whoa. wait a minute. They don't talk about that one in the history book. He got stabbed on the street. They said if he sneezed, he would have died. That's crazy. But one thing about it, he kept going after all that. And also a fun one, something if you didn't know, MLK loved jazz. He even said that jazz captured the spiritual rhythm of the universe. He vibed with Coltrane, Miles Davis, and a fan of Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin.
Let's not forget, too, I Have a Dream speech wasn't even his first big speech, meaning that his voice was meant to be for not just for himself, but for the greater good of humanity. The man had been preaching justice for years before that, and you can clearly tell by the things that he did. He had a passion. He was a great orator, great public speaker, and was able to convey the masses in a way that galvanized people. Even still to this day, we are still talking about him because he is still a voice of change in our communities.
Talk to him nice. And one thing I will say, although, these people are, like you said, icons and they, are voices of change, does not disclude anyone from being human. And Dr. King was just another person, right? But he wasn't perfect. He wasn't universally loved in his time, in his lifetime, but he never wavered in his commitment to justice for Black people, for poor people, and oppressed folks worldwide.
His fight was bigger than one speech or just one march. He built bridges. Alabama to Accra, Memphis to Soweto. His legacy belongs to the global Black struggle, and it should still belongs to the global gospel struggle as well, because he was also a preacher. He was a man of faith. So as we all realize what he did, he might not have been perfect. He might have not been loved by everybody, but he was still intentional and purposeful in whatever he did. You know why? Because he was a voice of change, and that's what we talk about.
So as we do celebrate MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., let's go deeper. Study his full body of work from start to finish and embrace the uncomfortable truths and keep pushing the dream, because it wasn't just about hope, it was about action.
And that's all we're going to just talk about today. That's a wrap on this episode of the Voices of Change. Check out the King Institute and the King Center and Ebenezer Baptist Church as well in Atlanta, Georgia. Go check it out. Been there. Great place. If you want to read more and get involved and learn about him, go back to where the roots are. And you can see as our logo at Voices of Change, it has an emblem to words like roots, because you can see something growing. Because he was a voice of change that was setting roots to the future, right? So as we remember him and honor him, let's always remember, embrace the uncomfortable truths, but keep pushing the dream, because as my great co-host said here, it wasn't just about hope. It was about the action.
Take action, my friends. Have a dream and take action for it. But also, this is us signing out. We'll catch you next time. Stay proud, stay rooted, stay tuned, and stay building. This is the Voice of Change podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram,
the Alive Podcast Network as well.
Podcast Network.
Black hosted places.
Black hosted channels and places where you can go and get your fix. Learn a piece and get in the mix. But without further ado, we're going to have to go ahead and scoot. So peace out. Many blessings. And
stay proud, stay rooted, stay building. Peace out. This is the Voice of Change. Peace out, y'all.
Peace out. Peace.
Yeah.